Have you ever wondered if there was some magical part of you that you've been unable or afraid to access? Have you ever felt or been told you're crazy? Here's a thought to ponder. What if you're not? What if every imaginary friend, every letter to Santa Claus, every fairy or elf you saw as a child was your inner self reaching out to the spiritual world? What if your blocks are really a bridge? What if your wounds are really your windows? What if all your anxiety and your trauma are there to elevate you to something greater than yourself? I'm here to tell you, you're not crazy, you're connected. Hear from the rock stars of the New Age world about that moment when they stepped into their power and how you can step into yours too. Here on Crazy Connected with your host, Bridget LeRoy. Welcome to this episode of Crazy Connected with me, your host, Bridget LeRoy. I have a really amazing guest today. Her name is Peri Lyons. She is a New York City celebrity psychic medium, and I have had the great pleasure of testing out her services, and I can tell you, wow. I had such an incredible spiritual connection with Peri that I immediately said, "You got to come on the show, girl. You got to come on." And also a few years ago, Peri came to visit, and we have a mutual friend, and we were walking around, I think, talking about my dad at Bay Street Theater, where the dressing room is named after him, and the lights started flickering, and I was like, what is going on? So I'm very, very excited to welcome Peri Lyons to the show. Welcome, Peri.
Hi, darling. Hi, Bridget. Hi, everybody. I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, I'm so glad you're here. So part of, I mean, you are obviously crazy connected, but I want to know about the time, as I ask everybody, where maybe you thought you were crazy and not so connected. Can you tell me a little bit about
Oh,
like your upbringing, perhaps?
I'd love to. Thank you. Well, ironically, I'm a direct descendant of one of the judges at the Salem Witch Trials.
Wow.
Um, and but I'm the direct descendant. His name is Cotton Mather. Um, and but I'm proud to say that after spending 3 days there, he's like, "You guys are bonkers. I'm out of here." Um, so I grew up in a very. Both my parents were my mother was a Ivy League history professor, very, very scientific minded.
Hmm.
My dad was a doctor. Um, and
Yeah.
what's funny is we always just knew that my mother was psychic. We just didn't even talk about it. It's just
Really?
you didn't bother lying to her because she would
She could
she would
tell.
then tell you, yeah. Uh, but interestingly, I think I got my ability from my father, who was the best diagnostician in the States.
Oh, that's
Um,
really interesting.
Yeah, and it's funny. I've talked to a couple of other psychics who had the same thing happen. Their mother or father was a doctor who had an enormous gift for diagnostics. And I started out as a medical psychic, um, and then the art world psychic. But here's the thing. It wasn't really, we weren't a very woo woo house, let's put
Right.
it that way.
Right.
Not, it wasn't encouraged. And the fact that in the last few years of my father's life, he turned to me and said, "Okay, I give up. Whatever you have, it's real." But can I
Wow.
tell you a quick little ghost story that illustrates my mom's
Please.
attitude? What?
No, we
Okay.
don't like ghost stories here at Crazy Connected. Are you kidding me? Tell.
But then I'll talk about microeconomics. No, okay. So I was 13 or 14, and it was a 1840 deaconry I grew up in.
Wow.
And this room had always spooked me out. It was on the top floor. I would not go into it, but it was so hot. It had the best air conditioning. So I went to sleep, and I woke up at 3 in the morning, and there was somebody standing by my bed. And I knew it wasn't my mom because my mom was blonde, and this woman had long black hair parted in the middle. My mother's kind of a tan complexion, and this woman had perfectly round, oval, very pale face. My mom, would wear LL Bean. This woman was wearing a black and white, like 1840 long day dress. Also, you can't
Wow.
see through my mom. Kind of a giveaway there.
You can't see
Oh,
through your mom. Okay, so this was clearly someone from beyond. So what
oh,
happened?
she stood next to my bed for 5 minutes. and her whole energy was, oh, I have to tell you something. It's really important. I'm very sad. And I'd be like, what? She's like, I have to tell you something. It's very important. I'm very sad. I'm like, what? This went on for 5 minutes. Kind of like
It
when you're
sounds like
at a
Who's on
party.
First, but with ghosts.
Yes, exactly. Or you're at a big party and you stop to ask some girl the way to the bathroom and she starts telling you about the breakup with her boyfriend and you're like, can I just know? So, uh, and then she vanished from from the bottom up. It was amazing. Like, whoop. So I went downstairs, went to the kitchen, and I was getting Malamars, which is the sovereign cure for all ills. And my mother came down, and she said, my mother was very Mayflower. My father was very
Mhm.
Jewish. Interesting combination. But my mother said, oh, darling, what are you doing up? And I said, Mother, I just saw a ghost. And she said, darling, no, you didn't. That was the right and left hemispheres of your brain arguing with each other. I'm like, Mom, it was a ghost. She said, darling, haven't you read Origins of Consciousness and the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind? I'm like, Mom, I'm 14. Can we stop? And she said, okay, well, I'll prove it to you. Was she, was it a woman? I said, yes. She said, did she have a very oval white face, long black hair parted in the middle, and a black and white 1840s sort of day dress? I'm like, yeah. She said, oh, darling, she doesn't exist. I've walked through her 3 times on the second floor.
Ah! So she definitely, wow. So your mom was psychic, but it was like a run of the mill to her almost. Like it was just something that she just had.
Either that or she was Cleopatra, Queen of Denial. So one of the two. Anyway,
Uh,
so
uh, so, but it's really interesting that you said that you get the powers or the gift from your father being a diagnostician and that he didn't really acknowledge that until later. How did you know that he had a gift? I mean, was it just well known throughout the state that he was really good at that?
kind of throughout the country. But it was, I remember when I was very ill, when I was very ill, when I was very little, sorry, uh,
Hmm.
one of our good friends became quite ill. And nobody could figure it out. And her symptoms were weird. It's like her left toe turned blue and she had a hangnail. And my father walked in and said she has was encephalitis. She had some sort of thing that was
Brain thing.
just not. It was not possible for him to diagnose. And she
Wow.
had to go to the hospital, have her blood replaced, and she was fine for 40 years afterwards. But he did that
That's
a lot.
amazing.
Yeah.
But so listen, Perry, so when you started out as a young adult, whatever, well, like what was your career path? I mean, did you start come out of the gate being like, "Oh, I'm psychic and I'm going to be able to make a living at this."
Oh heavens to Betsy, no. I I was a singer and a songwriter. I modeled for the Wilhelmina Agency, and then as I was making my way as a singer, and I was, I was a good model in that I photographed well. I was a bad model in that I would don't have depth perception, so I'd walk right off runways. Um, but
That must have been amusing. Not for
it,
you.
not for the people I landed on, but
Yeah.
um, um, no, my career path was I was a singer, songwriter, actor, I was a performance artist of all things. Um, and then I was in publishing for a while. I worked at Scholastic, so and supported my then husband in his career as a fine artist. I didn't really. It was something I did for friends,
Mhm.
but I didn't really take it seriously, and I didn't talk about it that much.
That's what I was going to ask you is like, how did you kind of maintain the thread between that woman standing next to your bed and the life you now lead? And so you kind of like used it almost like, I hate to say it this way, but like a party favor, right? You would do it for friends, right?
Um, I would do it as a way of sort of making new friends and before I got married, hitting on guys. Because there's nothing like taking somebody's hand and saying, "Let me read your hand." Um, but I also read a lot of literature. Um, I think that one thing that made me accepting of this in myself is I grew up reading a lot of fairy tales, a lot of um, when I was growing up, we had like the blue fairy book, the red fairy book.
Oh, I
His,
loved those books.
oh, you
Wh- who-
haven't? I loved
Oh my
them.
God, they were the best. I'm just trying to think who wrote them. The
Andrew Lang.
Andrew Lang. Oh my God, I loved them. The Purple Fairy book, all of
Yeah.
those books, and the sketches in them were so gorgeous.
And a lot of them were also were fairy tales. They were written down now, but they had come up in a way as teaching tales through the ages in countries all over the world, as metaphors for kind of one's own powers in a way.
Yeah, yeah.
And I
I
find
mean, I can
myself
kind of see
using,
that now.
yeah,
No, that's fascinating. Tell me more about this because that is so interesting. I'm thinking of like ego and hero's quest, but it's also about supernatural or given powers, yeah?
and it's exactly. It's also about um, if for instance you're a princess who's had a spell laid on you and you can suddenly speak the language of the birds. I have birds, I know what they say, so I'm not that interested. Mostly it's give me some more millet spray or I'll bite your ear off. but um but it's about sort of accepting unexpected parts of your own personality, and for me, accepting and essentially coming out as a psychic was about accepting parts of who I was that I didn't plan for, I didn't expect. But you know, I
Here
like to
you
get
are.
to agreement with reality.
Yeah, I mean it's just amazing, and I mean you are incredibly gifted with
Thank
your
you.
gifts, for lack of a better word. So, what was like the moment where you kind of stepped into your own power and the kind of like screw this, I'm going to be who I am, and this is what I can do, and I am what I am.
It, interesting. It wasn't until a bit later in my life. I had uh, my ex husband. I was married for 20 years. My husband was a fine artist, and the aristocracy in England started collecting his work. So
Hmm.
we spent some time in England, and I spent some time at dinners with British aristocrats who don't like people who aren't British aristocrats. And I'm going to say, maybe not especially New York Jewish girls, but although I did make a couple of great, but there was no way to talk. I would start talking to them, and they would just turn the other way at a dinner. It's like because they don't care. They're British
Yeah.
aristocrats. And so I would say, let me read your palm. It was the one way I could get through to them. I started reading for all these British aristocrats, and I was right. And they started calling. And so I would do phone readings, and then my life moved on, and I was with, I was engaged to Norman Mailer's son for a few years. And he had a
That
lot
must
of
have been
celebrity
exciting.
friends, and I would just read for them as favors. And suddenly, all of these different movie stars and rock stars and were calling me and saying, "Can you tell me about this?" And I'm like, I'm going to have to charge you.
Hmm.
Um, and I finally just the demand. I mean, I don't want to sound conceited, but it just supply and demand. The demand got so
Yeah.
overwhelming. I finally quit my job. I was the personal shopper at the Louis Vuitton flagship store at that point. Um,
Wow.
and I said, okay, this is my new career. What's really interesting, and I've like people who are in the midst of perhaps quitting a career that's comfortable but not satisfying, is you will be tested if you decide to choose and chase your own passion. The moment you decide that, there are about 3 days when the universe says, "Are we sure? Are you sure? Are you sure?" What
So
happened to me
how
was
did
the
that
day after,
yeah, tell me what happened to you.
the day in the 2 to 3 days after I quit Vuitton, I got calls from Chanel and a couple of other big companies saying, "Would you like to be our personal shopper?" And those were good jobs.
Mm.
And it took a lot of faith to say, you know what? No, that's not for me. And,
Wow.
but it worked out. So to answer your question, it was kind of a slightly gradual process.
Hmm.
The other thing I'd like to mention, And then I'll let you speak for a while. How's that?
No,
Is
no, no.
that,
I'm here to listen to you. This is all so fascinating. Continue,
oh,
Peri
thank you, baby.
Lyons.
Thank you, baby. Thank you, Bridget. Um, the other thing is the culture has changed so much. 20, 15 years ago, when I would go to New York intellectual, dinners with my husband, because he was a famous painter and near very, very high New York intellectual circles, um, people would be like, "You're a psychic? Really?
Right,
How nice for you." And then they would corner me in the kitchen and demand I read their future. And I'd be like, "You know what? No, just no.
right.
You blew it." Um, and now it's, I think that being a psychic is a form of being queer,
Hmm.
that you have to stand up, assert who you are, demand respect, earn it. Well, I don't think LGBTQ have to earn respect, but you have to,
No, but I
but
know
you
what
have,
you mean. You have to own
yeah,
it and step into it and not admit it, but come out, so to speak. You have to
yeah,
come out.
and stand fully in who you are.
Yeah.
So,
Well, you truly do that. I mean, that is
thank you.
amazing. So, without using any names, can you tell me like a particularly interesting prediction or psychic moment that happened? Maybe you even doubted yourself a little, and then something happened, and you were like, "Oh yeah, I got it."
Um, let's see. A client who's a film star, a friend, called me. It was a while back, and she said, "I just got this script. My agent really wants me to take it. I'm the only woman." It's almost like frat boy humor. It's set in Las Vegas. There's a tiger in it.
I know
I'm
that
not
movie.
not going to say the name of the movie or the person, but
Okay.
and she said, "I don't know. I don't. I'm not really." I'm like, "Take it, take it, take it, take it, take it." I was standing up and shouting, like, and I was terrified that I was like, "Wait a minute, this is a big decision. Why am I being so insistent?" And she took it. And as a thank you, the next year she flew me and a couple of her friends to beautiful, like, oh my God, this mansion on the Mexican Riviera for a week. That was fun.
That's awesome. That's
And
amazing.
in a smaller way, a couple of days ago, I was reading for one of my favorite clients, and it was a morning reading. And I said, "Darling, you might want to work from home today." And she said, "Why?" I said, "Well, one of your kids is going to have a little minor accident in school and they're going to send her home, but nothing serious. I think, she's going to fall down, like twist her ankle. Nothing serious at all, but stay home." The 2 hours later, I got a phone call. Um, Thank you for saying that. Laura just came home. She's got a twisted ankle.
Oh my
And
God.
if I hadn't been here, would have been tough.
So how do these messages come to you? Do they come through like do they come from spirits or are they just coming from the energy? How does it morph into what comes out of your mouth?
What a fantastic question. No wonder I love your podcast so much.
Why,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Really, I've just the most interesting questions I've ever been asked. I've been interviewed a lot. I love this podcast. By
Thank
the way,
you.
the previous guests were fabulous too.
Oh,
Loved that.
thanks.
Okay,
Yeah, we
so
do. We have a factory here. We work tests to the bone. Yeah, but so how do the messages come or do they come in different ways?
well, it's interesting. The first time I saw people who had passed, I'm just dead people for lack of, to keep it simple.
Yeah.
Um, I had always been psychic. I'd always had clairvoyant ability. I'd never, except for flickers, I had not talked to people who had passed. Again, it's all kind of a gradual process. Um, so, how can I put this? The first time I talked to people on the other side, I was at my then husband's studio with, he had a brand new friend I didn't know anything about. It was, I don't know if you remember, like 15, 20 years ago, there was 24 hours in New York City where there was just lightning, from continuous lightning. Like all it was lightning. And I was supposed to have some friends
Wow.
join me. They wouldn't. show up because they were afraid they'd get fried. And so
Yeah.
I was talking to Adam and his new friend Alan, and I'm talking to Alan, and suddenly somebody appears next to him, which I wasn't
Really?
expecting. It was a little old lady. She looked a little like Khrushchev in a curly wig. She was wearing a Peter Pan collared house dress, holding a blue, like, ceramic pan with a puffy cake in it. And she said her name was Sarah. And she looked like the image was like a color slide projected onto water.
Hmm.
And
Wow, that's a
she said,
beautiful way of describing it. A color
"Thank
slide
you."
projected onto water. So it shimmered and kind of moved, but you
Yes.
could see all the colors and everything. Beautiful.
And I won't go too much. That was the first time I ever, but that was the first time. That's how uh, people who passed appear to me. I also have like about five guides,
Hmm.
and they kind of sometimes they'll rotate in and out. Like a couple will go on vacation. I would love to know where they go. Um,
Sure. Where do you go when you're dead and like you just need a break? I don't know.
Anywhere you want, you know,
I guess so.
someplace with high quality ectoplasm. I don't know. So
So,
it's interesting.
and do you ever just get like glimmer, like when you just like feel that something's right and it just comes through?
It's a combination of I'll get colors, I'll get a feeling, and I'll kind of lean into the feeling. It's like, is this yes or no, or is this right or wrong? And I'll feel kind of literally lean into it, and I'll listen to the feeling if that makes sense. I will also
Yeah.
see different colors, like if somebody's asking about like two different paths. I'll see
Hmm.
one path that's like got a lot of yellow on it, which is like very good. A lot of the other has a lot of gray on it, which is not so good. Um, I will. My guides will sometimes jump in and like literally. Sometimes they'll uh, gesture. They'll tell me something, or sometimes they'll hold up signs.
Yeah.
Um,
That's amazing. Actually hold up signs with writing on them?
yes, um, one of them is a friend of mine who passed prematurely, who is a great cinematographer. For some reason, he handles all legal stuff. Somebody, it's
In the
bizarre.
afterlife, he
Yes,
handles the
I don't know.
legal stuff?
Hell of a time to switch careers.
Yeah.
Um, my father actually comes and will tell me stuff about people, uh, medical stuff. But and I'll use the tarot or a form of divination.
Hmm.
If you're good at, you can use oatmeal as a
Right.
divining tool if you know what you're doing. But the
Right.
cards are wonderful. So thank you for asking. The answer is it's complicated, but
Right. Right. You have many different, there are many ways into the mind of Peri Lyons. So listen, we're wrapping up, believe it or not.
wow.
And I mean, I know that you are in very high demand. How do people, if people want to reach out to you, do you have a website? Do you have, like, how can people learn more about the incredible Peri Lyons and her
Well, thank
gifts?
you. My website, which has my New Yorker profile, and that was a lot of fun, and various testimonials, is actually under renovation. The best thing to do is get in touch with me. I honestly, I'm just going to say this: if you text me at 917-568-5368. Again, operators are standing by. Call before midnight tonight. You also get this fabulous set of the Carpenter's greatest hits. That's nine one
Uh,
seven five
I
six
want
eight.
the steak knives. I'm kidding.
917-568-5368. Or just um, email me at Peri Lyons, P-E-1-R-I,
Mhm,
Perry like
mhm.
periwinkle, Lyons, Lyons, at gmail.com.
That's great. And I had such a great time talking to you when we did connect.
Me to you.
And I mean, do you feel like in some ways you're like a coach or a therapist? I mean, you
Yeah,
really learn so much about the inner workings of humanity through what you do. And
thank you.
yeah. And like what do you do to nourish your own spirit and keep your own core strong and connected?
Oh, what a great question. I do a form of Buddhist chanting. I chant Nam Yo Ho Renge Kyo for health and happiness. Also, it's the best manifestation tool I've ever found. If you want to find out more about that, you can go to sgi.com. I
Actually, I do believe I believe it's sgi-usa.org because we are both, and I forgot that we are both Nichiren Buddhists. We both
right.
practice Nam-myoho Renge Kyo and do Ganyo, and it is a great tool for manifesting and connecting, isn't it?
It is. I take. If you do a lot of spiritual work, I suggest people that they take Epsom salt baths a couple times a week. It draws, it just strengthens your boundaries and cleanses your aura. And I also like to lie in bed and listen and watch old Cary Grant movies while my parakeets circle my head. So that's
Well, that's wonderfully specific. I'm not going to recommend other people do that because they may not have parakeets, but chanting Nam-myoho Renge Kyo and taking Epsom salt baths is awesome. Peri Lyons, thank you so much for coming on Crazy Connected. I know our paths will continue to intertwine and cross as we make our way through this crazy thing called life.
thank you, baby. And remember, my grandfather actually worked for your grandfather.
Oh, that's right, in
Yeah.
Hollywood, yeah?
All right, darling. Thank you so much. This is a
Thank
great
you.
podcast. I love you, and I hope to see you again soon, darling. Take
Same
care.
to you. Thanks, Peri.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye, listeners. Take care.